Princeton University Press Audio presents To Build a Black Future, The Radical Politics of Joy, Pain, and Care by Christopher Paul Harris, read by Landon Woodson. The uprisings in 2020 sprang from deep roots that spread and burst through soil and concrete casings, for centuries, on and on until. Here follows a fragment of that branch, the wretched blooms of late. Part 1. Chapter 1. We're not going to stand for this. The mandate for black people in this time is to avenge the suffering of our ancestors, earn the respect of future generations, and be willing to be transformed in the service of the work. Mary Hooks. Every generation confronts the task of choosing its past. Inheritances are chosen as much as they are passed on. The past depends less on what happened then than on the desires and discontents of the present. Strivings and failures shape the stories we tell. What we recall has as much to do with the terrible things we hope to avoid as with the good life for which we yearn. Saidiya Hartman. On a cold Saturday afternoon in December 2014, I joined tens of thousands of people on the streets of New York City to protest the killings of Michael Brown, Eric Garner, and Akai Gurley, while carrying the names of countless victims of state-sanctioned violence against black and other people of color. The march began near the iconic arch in Washington Square Park and, fittingly, culminated at One Police Plaza, the headquarters of the New York City Police Department. Throughout the day, marchers from what seemed like every corner of the city brandished now familiar signs and shouted now familiar chants. Each echoed different iterations of a phrase that has since helped shift the terms of debate about anti-blackness and its convergence with gender, sexuality, and class on a global scale. Black Lives Matter. Similar protests took place in other cities that afternoon, coordinated by loosely affiliated networks of support, leveraging social media. United in the spirit of a long-practiced tradition of public dissent, to take it to the streets, people from across the country came together to publicly amplify the open wound of an anti-black past whose shadow has yet to subside. A shadow, then and now, most viscerally present in the form of dead black bodies. With Black Death center stage, the demonstration, labeled the Millions March by a self-described multiracial grassroots collective of organizers committed to building and strengthening the movement for Black lives in NYC, was a locally pitched call to arms. But their appeal to action and the magnitude of the response didn't arrive in a vacuum. The march came on the heels of smaller-scale protests sparked in the immediate aftermath of the acquittal of Daniel Pantaleo, the police officer responsible for choking Garner to death on Staten Island. It also took place less than 6 months after Brown's murder in Ferguson, Missouri. Aided by the repressive tactics used by a heavily militarized Ferguson Police Department in its wake, ignited a highly visible tide of righteous rebellion, the effects of which similarly rippled across the country. The uprising in Ferguson was itself widely viewed as a turning point for black people in that city and beyond. It marked a moment in the making, since George Zimmerman was deemed to be standing his ground when he murdered Trayvon Martin the year before, the hour when many young black people realized something must be done and that they were the ones to do it. Against this backdrop, the Millions March sought to harness and direct the outrage that, by the end of 2014, had all but boiled over. As 23-year-old lead organizer Sid Nichols put it, "We want people to shut down their cities for justice. We are continuing where the freedom fighters of the civil rights movement left off. We are a new generation of young, multiracial activists willing to take up the torch, and we're not going to stand for this anymore." Continuity was essential to how these organizers understood their mandate. Nichols's words, along with the broader description of the collective's aims, suggested an ambition that surpassed the spectacle of a single march, or the potential catharsis of staging a day of anger. In her tone, her reference
Sample complete. Ready to continue?